Well, I'm back at work on the peacock quilt, and I'm working on the some of the background. I needed a break from this inner portion here. So what I've done is I've just lightly marked in with a washable marker some of the little arcs that are sort of becoming these little feathers, and then I'm just doing a little back and forth stitching in, and the thing is, this is some pretty pretty heavy quilting, so it's going to take a while, but I'm kind of liking the overall look. It's not hard. Actually it's going pretty smoothly, but again, it's something that is going to take quite a bit of time. Fortunately, there's not a whole lot of the background to fill in. It's just the majority of it is these four corners, like the one I'm working on now, and the rest are just small sections between, and they should go relatively fast. So anyway, I think it's looking pretty cool. The needle that I'm using, I just put in a new one, and what I found on this fabric, this is Radiance silk blend, what I found is my needle was getting dull, and it was starting to catch and make little teeny snags in the fabric. And because I've not used this fabric before, I didn't realize that would happen. You know, I'm usually really bad about changing my needle, and now, having seen those little snags that it can create, I understand why you'd want to keep your needle changed. It wasn't a big deal. I switched it out just as soon as it started doing that, and it's fine now. And the quilting is so heavy that you don't really see any of those marks, but it is, I suppose, important to realize that when you're doing this much sewing, that you really can start to wear out a needle. You know, when I was a kid and watching my mother sew, I remember the only time that a needle ever got changed was when you broke it. And that's always been my approach also. But since I started getting a little more into it, I've realized that a different needle makes a difference. And the right needle makes a difference. Now, I don't know what the right needle for this is, but the one I'm using is a 9014. Well, I put some basic quilting lines around my my shapes because with this light on for the camera, I was getting a big glare on my quilt, and I couldn't see where I was going, and those lines were just too faint. So I quilted them in first, and then I'll just go back and do the centers rather than trying to do the you know, each one individually like I was doing. Here's, for what it's worth, observation. When I do quilting that's pretty tiny, it's a lot easier to hide your mistakes. Great big designs, when they're a little off, I think they show more. So, as I'm doing these little things, feels like they don't show my mistakes as much. That's not probably true for every quilt, but anyway, it just seems to me that it's easier to hide your mistakes when they're tiny. So, if you didn't see the previous video, I'm using a treadle machine. This is a Singer Model 15, and I believe the one I'm working on, I have 3 of these, so different ages. I think this one is something like 1910. I'd have to look it up by the serial number again to remember for sure, but it's an old machine. It's over 100 years old. And I have a free motion quilting foot on it, and that's really the only thing that I needed to do to make an old machine and a treadle become something that can do quilting. Now the actual setup is, because these old machines did not have droppable feed dogs, you actually have to do the quilting with a little more, perhaps a little more tug on the fabric, but it really isn't that much. These quilting feet are loaded on a spring, and that doesn't put a whole lot of pressure on the fabric that would make those feed dogs engage. It just, in this case, it's just kind of riding over the top. If you watch this when it goes, it's not really hopping that much. Here's a different one. When the needle bar goes, this lever goes over the screw that holds the needle in, and so when the when that goes up and down, it makes the foot hop up and down with each stitch, and that When it's up, it releases the pressure, it keeps the quilt moving over the feed dogs without it engaging. So, in this case, on that needle, this little metal bar here, I actually bent it up on this one here so that it's not hopping very much at all. It's really, you know, if you look at it, there's not a lot of bounce there. What I really wanted instead is for it to essentially just sort of glide over the top of the fabric. And that keeps enough pressure on the fabric to create a stitch, but it keeps that foot from popping up and down all over the place, because that can tend to frankly be a little distracting. So that's how I have it set. Every machine is different. You may or may not want to try bending your free motion foot to do what I've done. I've used them without, and it's not a problem. I just prefer it this way on this machine. So I have, I don't know, 30-ish or more machines, and depending on the quilt I'm doing and the thread and the batting and the backing, I also have probably, I don't know, 10 different free motion quilting feet, and I kind of sometimes feel like I have to test every one of them until I find the right one for the particular quilt I'm working on. I've yet to find one foot that I like on every machine and every quilt that I've used. So I play with it a little bit to find one that feels right for the given project. The other thing that I have on here is I've got one of those Teflon slider mats that go on the machine bed, and they do, I find, make a big difference. The idea is that it makes the quilt slip and slide over the surface of the machine better, and I really think they do. When I first started trying to do machine quilting not too long ago, earlier in the year, I had a real hard time maneuvering the fabric around and getting the quilt to do. Now see, here's an interesting thing. Sometimes when you're using an open toe foot, that toe gets stuck under the edge. I don't know if you can see that, but it's caught over the foot, so sometimes you'll have to unhook it and get it out of there. Anyway, so I had a harder time when I first started maneuvering and getting the fabric to do what I wanted it to. And what I first tried was quilting gloves, machine quilting gloves. They are, let me see if I can find them. Here we go. They're a regular, sort of like a cotton glove, but they've got a rubberized little dots all over them. And you put those on, and that helps the your hands not slip over the fabric. It gives it a grip. It makes it want to stay or hold on, and it makes it push easier. And they work okay, but I don't know if you can see this. Every piece of thread in the world sticks to them, and it drives me crazy. I have to take them off to change my needle or change my thread, and I'm taking them off and putting them on more than seems practical. So I wanted to come up with something that was easier for me. Now I tried, let me see if I can find that. I can't remember what brand these are, but the idea here is that you, these have little rubberized fingers on them, and that you put this on, and then you've got little handles to hold on to. And it keeps the right pressure, and it eases up the pressure on your shoulders. So these actually work pretty good. I just have found after practicing and getting a little better at it, I can do it without, and it's fine. But this this silicone mat that goes on the base is what's making that work better. I'm able to slide it because I've got that I said silicone, I meant Teflon, whatever it is. It's a look for a you know, if you want to buy one, just do a Google search and type in free motion quilting slider mat. You'll find a couple of different brands. I think they're worth every penny. When I first got these, I was real excited about it. This is Fabulous Fabric Glide by the Gypsy Quilter. That's what they're called, and they come in 2 sizes. And again, they work fine, but I'm at the point now where I'm not using them. Anyway, so you might want to try that if you're having trouble moving your fabric around. I think one of the important things, more than anything else, is having the right work surface. You need enough space on the left side of your machine to hold a lot of fabric and a lot of quilting. The whole quilt is essentially over there for now. Eventually, you know, some of it will be jammed up inside the throat of the machine. But if you have a big table next to you that way, on that side of the quilt, you've got most of the weight of the quilt then will be able to sit on that table, and it won't be pulling against you as you're trying to maneuver the quilt around. So having it all hang over on the floor really makes the stitching harder because you're needing to pull that whole quilt around rather than just a little bit of it with your hands. You're needing to be able to force the weight of the entire quilt. So a good work area is I think one really important thing. Some people will actually pull their machine out and put a table behind it too to catch the quilt as it goes out back that way. You know, you don't need one in your lap. Your lap can hold whatever's falling out in front of you. The other thing that I think is really important is the correct height. If you're trying to do this with your machine too high, which I think most people are, it's going to be a lot harder. And the reason I say most people have their machine too high is because they have a portable machine. It's not in a table, and you set it on top of a table that's regular kitchen table height, and it's just too tall because the machine itself is about, you know, from the bottom of the table to the top of the bed is about that high, and a table is higher than it should be. A regular table, you need it to be more desk height than table height. So your you're trying to do this with your hands way up at this level where they should be down here. So if you're having trouble, another thing to check is try to get your machine lower. I think you'll find it makes a difference. In this particular treadle base, this machine is at, I believe, 29 inches. I could be wrong, it might be 30. But that's about the right height for me. And I'm certainly not tall, but I'm not super short. I'm 5'10". And 30-inch work height is good for me. So if you're shorter than me and you're working at a surface that's even higher, I think you'd benefit from trying a lower work surface. Or at least look at adjusting your chair height. Good ergonomic work requirement for sitting at the sewing machine and doing a lot of work should not put any uplift on your shoulders. So if your arms are so high that you can feel that, you know, when your arms are flat, you shouldn't feel any pressure on your shoulders. You should almost be able to put your elbows flat on the work surface and not have any pressure. That to me is the ideal height. So try a different work height. Try one of the things to make the quilting easier for movement, such as quilting gloves or a slider mat or one of those handled items, and I think that'll make a difference. And of course the other thing that makes all the difference in the world is practice. And I was just looking at the first machine quilted quilt that I did. I have it hanging on the wall in the other room, and I am amazed at how much better I've gotten just by doing it. There's no substitute for practice. It really does end up making a world of difference. So, I'm getting fairly close to having this section filled in. When I started this, I wasn't quite sure if I was going to do the entire quilt in one thread color or if I was going to switch out in different areas. And I've just used this turquoise thread on the whole thing, and I'm really glad that's what I did. I think the thread color works perfectly, and it has sort of enhanced the overall design. So I'm glad I stuck with not getting carried away and making it into a bigger deal than it needed to be. You know, I said I'm not getting carried away and look at how much quilting I'm doing, but I could have gotten a lot more carried away by doing this much quilting and changing the threads frequently. So, anyway, I can't remember what brand this thread is. I'll have to look it up for you. But there's 5,500 yards on the cone, and I got it on eBay, and I only paid $6 for it. Now that's good. That's good value. I had some serious doubts about whether it was going to be sufficient quality to work, but it's really nice. I'm not getting any snags or tangles. I'm liking the stitch quality. I haven't broken a thread yet. Pretty nice stuff. I think one of the most important things to learn is speed control. And again, I don't do this on an electric machine, I do it on a treadle, so it's a little different. But a lot of people have told me that they were told when doing free motion quilting that it goes better if you go fast. And I dispute that by saying that I couldn't figure out how to do it until I went very, very slowly. So, if you're having difficulty, it may be that you're going too fast, and that if you slow down, you might get better results. It's really a combination deal. You have to get the machine running at the right speed for the speed that your hands are moving, because that's what's creating the stitch length. And if your hands move faster than your machine, you end up getting weird big stitches or deformed stitches. So that's part of the practice as well, is getting that rhythm. Okay, I've just about got that section done. You know, I'll have to keep going here. So now I'm going to go back into this area. I don't know if I can get a, let me readjust and see if I can get a decent shot of what I'm doing here. Well, that'll work, I think. So I don't know if you can see. Let me look at the camera. Sure, it shows. So the areas in between the between these parts of the peacock feathers are filled in with sort of a tight meandering stitch, which, as it turns out, in hindsight, I really like the look, but boy, it takes a long time. I don't know how bad that will be. It didn't seem to cause a problem. I was just stitching without my presser foot down. And what happens when you stitch without your presser foot down is, yeah, it did it. You get a mess. You see that? So I'm going to have to stop and cut off that mess and clean it up, and I'll be back later to show you where I'm going to go from there. But well, that's the one thing with these feet. It's sometimes pretty hard to tell whether that's up or down based on the foot. So try to make it a practice to remember to, before you start sewing, put that thing down, because there's nothing I hate more than having to pick all this out. But anyway, that's where we're at. Okay, I got the tangles out and got it started up to moving again, and I know forgive me if my hands are in the way. I keep trying to be able to get you to see right up next to the needle to see what I'm doing, but it's not always easy to keep my hands out of the way of the camera. So here's what I'm doing with this. I'm just making this really tiny meandering stitch to fill in these spaces between, and on this, because the space is so small, I am really making myself go just about as slowly as I can so that I don't run over and quilt over something that I'm supposed to be leaving. And way down at the end here, there's just not enough space to do any meandering. So down here it's mostly just straight stitching until I get out far enough to be able to do this kind of stuff. Now what I'm doing is restitching over a line that's bringing me back to the starting point, and then I'll start back to doing a little bit of this little stitching here, and again, as I get a little more into it, I'm going to end up going even slower so that all gets filled in and I don't run over any of the parts that I'm not supposed to. So it's a matter of really being patient and controlling where you're going. And this part is really, its main function is to press down the in-between sections to make the unquilted areas stand up more, and it's maybe harder to see with this light, but anyway, that's what's giving it the texture, and that makes the other parts show up. So that's why I'm doing that. I think it's when I first started doing it, I wondered if I hadn't started wasting my time, that it looked better before I filled the in-betweens in. But now that I've got a good section of it done, I think it was definitely the right move, and I like it. So I just have to realize that it's going to take a really long time, and it's not something that you can probably, at least I can't do a whole lot of at once. Now, what I'm doing on this one is I am taking a break every time I run out of bobbin thread. And that is to get up and walk around and get a cup of coffee, and that keeps my eyes from going cross-eyed and makes me less likely to get real fatigued and have my leg get tired from pumping the treadle, and have my shoulders and arms tired. It's just mostly, though, the break is for my eyes. When I'm getting into such little tiny skinny spaces, for me, even with great lighting, it makes my eyes tired, and when I start to get confused as to whether I'm sewing over the right part or the wrong part, then I know it's time to stop. But anyway, usually the bobbin running out is a good opportunity for me to know, okay, here's a good place to take a break. And then sometimes I actually start rooting for the bobbin to wear out or to run out, which is kind of funny because usually, it's the other way around. That like, oh, I hope I have enough to finish this without having to rewind another bobbin. But sometimes I start to think, boy, if that bobbin doesn't end up running out pretty soon, I'm going to need to take a break anyway. Since I drew the peacock feathers by eye, just drew them directly onto the fabric freehand. They're all different, and there's no real uniformity to them. I mean, they all have the same sort of look to them, but they're all different. And so each area that I work on, I really have to pay a lot of attention to, because the spacing between the petals is going to, or the plumage is going to be different. The whole thing is variable, so I have to pay a lot of attention to real close in here where those lines get so close together. I have to make sure that I don't start going over and sewing into the wrong section, and so it's a little bit of stay on the alert kind of stuff that when I hand quilt, which is what I do in the evenings while I'm sitting around watching TV, it makes me feel less guilty about watching television if I'm actually doing something at the same time. So anyway, when I'm hand quilting, I have a much easier time not being super focused, because the worst thing that could happen is one stitch goes wrong, and it's easy to pull one out. On this, you know, I could sew quite a bit and not realize that I had done it wrong until quite a bit later. So sometimes because of the extra attention that's needed with a project like this, I'm only good for a couple of hours. There have been projects where I've done it by machine, and you know, I can quilt for 8-10 hours in one day, and it's not a problem. But it's not this kind of quilting either. That is when I'm doing some real basic stuff that it isn't nearly the amount of attention required as this. The other thing that I'm experiencing with this particular quilting project is turning into fall, and the weather's changing. I have my favorite grubby beat up sweatshirt on. This machine cabinet is right over a heat vent, and my heat's gone on a couple of times, and the heat comes out and blows right on my feet, which is kind of fun. But the other thing that I have is fall allergies, and I get a tickly throat and a runny nose, and it gets, you know, I have a lot of that throughout the year, but I get it worse in the fall. And so sometimes I have to take a break just to blow my nose and try to clear up my sinuses. And the other day, I almost fell asleep while working here because I took some Benadryl, which does a good job relieving my runny nose problem, but it also nearly puts me into immediate sleep. It's very drowsy making. So if I fall asleep, that's why. Or if I sound like I've got a cold, that's the reason. It's allergy season for me. Anyway, I think you can get the idea of what I'm up to. and you don't need to see me do the entire quilt. I'll come back and show you some progress in a bit when I get more completed. But I think with this, you can really get between these two sections, you can get an idea of where that's going. So, happy quilting.